Beneath the endless horizon, the sea whispered its secrets. Waves curled gently, their song older than time itself. Seagulls cried above, tracing white arcs across the sky. The scent of salt drifted, carrying memories of forgotten ages. In the heart of this boundless blue, power and mystery stirred. The ocean was not silent. It breathed, it dreamed, it waited. At its core dwelled Poseidon, lord of tides and tempests. He ruled with a trident of gold, yet his heart bore storms. To mortals he was mighty, to creatures of the deep, eternal. But even gods are tested, and the sea keeps its own law. Whispers moved like currents, telling of a trial to come. A serpent, ancient as the first wave, had awakened. It stirred from shadows where light had never touched, not to destroy, but to measure, to weigh the soul of the sea. Would Poseidon prove himself more than a master of storms? Would he rise as a guardian, gentle and just? The waters held their breath, awaiting the encounter. The trial was not of strength, but of wisdom and heart. And so begins the tale of Poseidon and the sea serpent's trial. The sea was calm, a mirror stretched to the edges of the world. Sunlight danced on the waves, breaking into shards of silver light. Beneath the surface, a kingdom breathed in silence and grace. Coral towers rose like cathedrals, painted in crimson and gold. Fish swam in flocks, weaving patterns like living constellations. Seahorses clung to drifting kelp, their tiny crowns proud and tall. Schools of dolphins leapt in arcs, laughter echoing in the deep. In this harmony stood the palace of Poseidon, lord of the sea. Its gates shimmered with shells, its pillars carved from pearl. The walls carried songs of whales, etched into sacred stone. Poseidon walked through the hall, trident gleaming in his hand. His eyes, blue as storm clouds, watched every tide with care. Though mighty, his heart carried the weight of endless oceans. He ruled with power, but shadows of doubt followed close. Was he feared more than loved? Was strength enough to lead? The sea itself seemed to whisper, reminding him of balance. Tritons gathered in the courtyard, blowing horns of coral. Mermaids danced in spirals, hair flowing like seaweed flames. The people of the deep adored their king, yet kept their distance. For Poseidon was both protector and tempest, calm and storm. This morning was different, though the waters seemed still. An unease stirred beneath, like a current no eye could see. Fish darted faster, hiding within coral caves in silence. Whales sang low notes, warning of something vast and near. Poseidon felt it, a pulse that echoed in his chest. The ocean was alive, but today it held a secret fear. He stepped to the balcony, gazing into the endless blue. From horizon to horizon, the waves carried a heavy hush. The stillness was not peace, but waiting, a breath unspent. The god placed his trident down, listening with his soul. The sea spoke not in words, but in rhythm and pull. It told him of something stirring, old as the first dawn, an awakening, a ripple deep in forgotten chasms below. Poseidon closed his eyes, the salt air filling his lungs. He remembered tales told by Nereus, the wise old seer. Stories of a guardian coiled in the abyss, bound by time. A serpent vast as mountains, silent for 1,000 years. Not a beast of rage, but of measure. Keeper of balance. It rose not in hunger, but in judgment of the sea. Poseidon opened his eyes, waves striking against the rocks. The sea did not move against him, but it called him. He knew the trial would come, whether he sought it or not. In the great hall, the voices of his court echoed faintly. Nereids whispered of whirlpools forming in far waters. Fishermen prayed as nets returned empty, their sails torn. The signs were clear, though none dared speak the truth. Only Poseidon understood the pattern within the silence. He stood tall, though his heart carried the weight of storms. This was no summons of war, no clash of spear and blade. It was the beginning of a trial, one he could not escape. A trial not of conquest, but of patience and of heart. The god of the sea turned, walking into the shadows. Behind him, the palace shimmered like a dream of coral. Before him, the unknown stirred, waiting in the deep. The calm before the storm had ended, and the sea watched. So began the first steps toward the serpent's awakening. Whispers began to move through the deep, carried on unseen currents. Creatures stirred in their caves, listening with wary silence. Something vast shifted below, a rhythm older than memory. The sea's song grew heavier, as though warning of change. Merfolk felt it first, their songs faltering with sudden unease. They swam in groups, eyes wide, tails flashing in hurried strokes. Tritons raised their horns, sending signals across the kingdom. The whales answered with low notes, vibrating through the water. Even the smallest fish knew and darted into shadows. The calm of the morning gave way to troubled movement. Poseidon stood at the edge of his palace balcony again. The sea, once open and clear, now seemed veiled in thought. Every wave carried a murmur, a fragment of hidden speech. The god's brows furrowed, his trident pulsing faintly in his hand. He knew the ocean never lied, its whispers always true. The question was not if, but why the serpent stirred. Legends told of its sleep beneath trenches black as night. It slumbered through centuries, awakened only by imbalance. Not anger, not hunger, but the weight of disharmony. And now, the signs spread like ripples across the tides. Sailors spoke of whirlpools where none had formed before. Boats vanished in calm weather, pulled into silent depths. Coral beds cracked and shifted, releasing clouds of sand. Even the moon's pull seemed heavier on the tides. Poseidon felt it, as though the ocean exhaled uneasily. In the court of the sea, voices began to rise. Nereids gathered, their flowing hair clouded with worry. "The serpent stirs," one whispered. "Its eyes are opening." Others shivered, recalling stories told to them as children. "The guardian wakes when harmony breaks," another said softly. The hall fell into silence, the words too heavy to bear. Poseidon lifted his hand. The court quieted at once. His voice was steady, though the weight pressed upon it. "The serpent does not rise without cause," he declared. "It is bound to the balance of the ocean's soul." The assembly trembled, though none dared to speak further. The god turned inward, feeling the call of the abyss. The disturbance was not an enemy, but a summons. The sea itself demanded reckoning, a measure of truth. Outside the palace, currents grew strange and restless. Shadows coiled like smoke along the ocean floor. Creatures of light dimmed their glow, hiding their brilliance. The seabed groaned, sending tremors through coral towers. Poseidon closed his eyes, listening beyond the noise. He heard the whisper more clearly now, a name unspoken. It was not rage that stirred, but ancient authority. The serpent called, not to fight, but to test. Poseidon's heart tightened, though his face betrayed nothing. He knew this was no ordinary omen, but a trial. The sea would not wait, nor could he delay. Already the waters moved with purpose beyond control. The balance was shifting, and the serpent would rise. Poseidon placed his trident upright, the hall glowing faintly. Blue light spilled across the marble floor like falling rain. Spoke again, voice low yet carrying across the court. "I will descend into the abyss, where the serpent dwells. Gasps echoed, for none had dared such a path in ages. The sea calls me to answer, and I cannot refuse. His words settled like anchors in the hearts around him. The court bowed, though fear weighed on every motion. In the distance, a tremor shook the kingdom once more. It was soft, but enough to rattle the pearl gates. The ocean's heart was restless, waiting for its guardian. And Poseidon knew the time of whispers was nearly done. The trial would not come tomorrow, but very soon. The serpent stirred, and the sea prepared for its judgment. The palace of the sea grew restless, its halls filled with voices. Messengers swam swiftly, carrying news from distant waters. Whirlpools had formed near islands where none had ever spun. Tides shifted strangely, flooding shores without moon or storm. The signs multiplied, painting the ocean in anxious strokes. Poseidon summoned the council of the waves to his hall. They came from every corner of the deep, shimmering and grave. Nereids glided in with flowing hair like rivers of light. Tritons arrived bearing horns, their faces carved in stone. Sea spirits gathered, eyes glowing like pearls in shadow. Even dolphins swam near, circling with nervous grace. The court was alive, a living tide of worry and fear. Poseidon stood at the center, trident bright against the gloom. His gaze was steady, but the ocean's weight pressed on him. The council bowed low, waiting for his voice to rise. He spoke, and the hall quieted like a sea at dawn. "The serpent stirs," Poseidon said, his words heavy with truth. "It does not wake without cause, nor without meaning." A murmur rippled through the gathering, soft as shifting sand. A Nereid stepped forward, her voice trembling like a shell. "My lord, the serpent is ancient, bound to the balance. It rises when harmony falters, when the sea grows restless." Poseidon listened, his eyes reflecting the hall's dim glow. A Triton raised his horn, his voice deep and solemn. "If the serpent awakens, it is no beast of wrath. It is a judge, a keeper of laws older than gods." The council shivered at the truth carried in those words. The sea itself seemed to echo them in hushed tones. Poseidon lifted his hand, silencing the murmurs again. "I have felt its call," he said, his voice unwavering. "It seeks not war, but truth, a trial to be faced." The spirits bowed, though unease lingered in every heart. Another Nereid spoke, her eyes wide with ancient fear. "Few who hear the serpent's call ever return unchanged. It does not wound the body, but it weighs the soul." The council fell silent, the water thick with unspoken dread. Poseidon's voice grew softer, yet carried greater weight. "If the sea demands judgment, I will answer its call. For I am not only its lord, but its guardian." The words settled like anchors, steady but unyielding. The council bowed deeply, though sorrow lined their movements. For they knew their god faced a trial unlike any before. No weapon, no army, no storm could shield him this time. The serpent's trial would measure his spirit, not his strength. Outside, the currents grew stronger, pulling at the palace walls. The council dispersed, their voices echoing in worried tones. Poseidon remained, standing tall against the shifting tide. He looked toward the abyss, where silence held dominion. The serpent waited there, coiled in shadows of time. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the sea. The trial was coming, and he would not turn away. In that vast hall of pearl and coral light, he swore, "I will face the guardian, and I will not falter." The ocean listened, its waves answering with solemn rhythm. So the council of the waves ended, but the fear remained. The sea grew darker, the whispers stronger, the balance thin. and Poseidon walked into the shadows of destiny's tide. The council was dismissed, yet the weight of silence lingered. Poseidon remained alone in the great hall of pearl and coral. The sea outside pressed against the walls, restless and loud. He knew the serpent's stirring was not an accident or chance. It was a summons, a challenge older than Olympus itself. The abyss called, its voice wrapped in tides and whispers. Poseidon placed his trident on the stone floor with care. Its golden prongs glowed faintly, answering the ocean's pull. He closed his eyes and let the sound of water guide him. The serpent did not rise as a foe, but as a judge. Its trials were not battles, but questions hidden in the deep. Poseidon knew he must face them or the sea would unravel. This was the choice before him: to rule with fear or with heart. He thought of storms he had unleashed in anger and pride. He thought of sailors who trembled when waves swallowed their ships. He thought of creatures who bowed, unsure if he was guardian or tyrant. The serpent would weigh not his power, but his truth. He opened his eyes, the hall shimmering with ocean light. The trident hummed softly, as though urging him forward. In the distance, a tremor rolled through the seabed again. Columns rattled, and pearl dust drifted like snow in the water. The abyss was stirring, calling him to its endless dark. Poseidon lifted the trident, its glow steady in his grasp. He spoke aloud, though no one was left to hear him. "I will not turn away, for the sea is mine to serve." The words settled into the water, carried far and wide. Even the smallest fish paused, sensing the vow of their king. Far above, waves crashed harder, echoing the weight of destiny. In the silence that followed, Poseidon made his decision. He would journey to the abyss where the serpent waited. No army could follow, no spirit could shield him. The trial was his alone, written in the tides of fate. The god stepped from the hall into the open waters. Creatures moved aside, bowing as he passed in solemn silence. The seaweed swayed gently as though guiding his path ahead. The ocean floor stretched wide, lit by glowing coral fires. Yet beyond the light, darkness waited, heavy and endless. Poseidon swam forward, each stroke filled with certainty and calm. He carried not the pride of a ruler, but the weight of a guardian. The serpent's voice echoed faintly now, soft but unmistakable. Not words, but presence, a pulse in the current itself. It was patient, waiting, coiled in the silence of time. Poseidon's heart tightened, yet he did not slow his pace. The choice was made, and the trial had already begun. Behind him, the palace gleamed faintly, a beacon of the sea. Ahead, the abyss stretched open like the mouth of eternity. He felt no fear, only the gravity of purpose pulling him. The sea did not resist. It carried him to his fate. Currents shifted, surrounding him with paths that twisted and turned. Each flow felt like a question, each wave like a riddle. He let the water guide him, resisting the urge to command. The journey was a test in itself, patient and deliberate. Still, he pressed onward, trident glowing in the gathering dark. The whispers grew louder, forming shapes in the shadows. Ancient eyes opened far below, watching without judgment yet. Poseidon stopped, floating in the water's heavy silence. The sea serpent was near, closer than ever before, and the first measure of his heart was about to begin. The abyss opened wide, swallowing the last trace of light behind him. Poseidon moved forward, guided only by the glow of his trident. The water grew colder, pressing against him with ancient weight. Every beat of his heart echoed like a drum in the silence. The serpent's presence pulsed stronger, woven into the current itself. Yet still it did not appear, only watching from the dark. The ocean floor dropped suddenly, a vast trench without end. Poseidon hovered above it, staring into its yawning mouth. Shadows shifted below, vast shapes coiling and uncoiling slowly. The abyss whispered, its voice layered with countless forgotten tongues. Poseidon felt no malice, only the measure of something eternal. He tightened his grip on the trident, steady but unthreatening. The current shifted again, and a form began to rise. Scales shimmered faintly, reflecting starlight never meant for the sea. Eyes opened like suns beneath the water, ancient and patient. The serpent emerged, vast and graceful, coiling without haste. Its gaze held the calm weight of time itself unbroken. It circled him slowly, surrounding but never striking. The trial had begun, wordless yet clear in its meaning. Poseidon bowed his head, acknowledging the creature's silent demand. He was not here to fight, but to reveal his heart. The serpent's eyes burned brighter, and the water thickened. Images flickered in the dark, drawn from memory and truth. He saw the storms he had cast in anger, cruel and wild. He saw sailors lost, their cries swallowed by waves he commanded. He saw temples raised in his honor, offerings cast into the sea. But he also saw fear, etched deep in mortal hearts. The serpent tested him with his own history, sharp and unyielding. Poseidon felt the weight of each image, heavy with regret. He could not deny them, for they were of his making. The serpent's coils tightened, not in threat, but in judgment. Poseidon's voice carried into the depths, steady and clear. I have ruled as storm, yet storms cannot heal the sea. I have demanded worship, yet true power is not in fear. I have struck without thought, and the ocean has borne my wrath. But the sea is not mine to wound, it is mine to serve. The serpent's eyes softened, their fire shifting to calm light. The water around him warmed, as if approving his words. Yet the trial was not over, only its first measure complete. The serpent released its coil, circling wider, slower, calmer. A new current stirred, pulling Poseidon toward the trench below. The abyss deepened, darker than any night above the waves. The serpent sank slowly, guiding him without force or command. Poseidon followed, though the dark pressed closer with each stroke. He trusted the path, for he had chosen to be judged. Shadows grew thicker, forming shapes that whispered his doubts. Are you ruler or servant? Do you protect or destroy? The voices pressed against his mind, heavy as crushing tides. He pressed forward, repeating his vow into the cold dark. I am guardian of the sea, and the sea is endless. His trident shone brighter, parting the shadows with steady light. The serpent glided beside him now, no longer distant. Its presence was not threat, but companionship in the trial. Together they descended, past the last trace of familiar waters. The abyss yawned deeper, where no mortal eye had ever seen. Poseidon's heart was steady, though the weight of judgment pressed. The serpent's gaze lingered, waiting for more than words. For in the next trial, actions would weigh heavier than speech. And so the god of the sea swam deeper into the unknown. The darkness thickened, wrapping itself around Poseidon like a living cloak. The water pressed close, heavy as if the sea wished to test his breath. Yet his trident shone steadily, a lone star in the endless abyss. The serpent swam ahead, vast coils sliding through the void with ease. It did not speak, but its silence carried the weight of questions. Poseidon followed, his strokes even, his heart steady with purpose. At last, the trench floor appeared, a plain of stone and shadow. Fissures glowed faintly, lines of fire breathing through the cracks. The sight was strange, for here the sea met the heart of earth. Steam rose in tendrils, curling into patterns that whispered old truths. The serpent circled above the glowing fissures, its eyes fixed on him. The water shifted, currents shaping themselves into visions once more. This time he did not see his past, but the sea itself. He saw coral gardens fragile as glass, homes to countless lives. He saw schools of fish weaving rivers of light through the dark. He saw whales carrying songs that echoed through centuries of tide. And he saw nets, harpoons, and fire cast by mortal hands. He saw pollution seeping like poison, smothering reefs and choking waves. The vision turned darker, showing futures that could come to be. Dead seas, lifeless and silent, the beauty of the deep erased. Poseidon felt the weight of it, heavier than any storm. The serpent lowered its head, waiting for his response in silence. The god's hand trembled slightly on the trident's golden shaft. He realized then that this trial was not only for him, it was for all who touched the sea, god and mortal alike. The serpent demanded not defense, but responsibility and vision. Poseidon raised the trident, letting its light spread across the trench. He spoke, his voice carrying into every fissure and current. The sea is life, and I am its keeper, not its chain. Mortals have forgotten, and I too have failed to remind them. But no wave should carry despair, and no tide should drown hope. I will guide them, not with fear, but with truth and care. His words settled into the abyss, echoing like steady thunder. The serpent's eyes glowed brighter, their fire softening into trust. The fissures pulsed once, then calmed, sealing some of their restless fire. The water warmed gently, a sign that his vow was heard. Yet the serpent did not retreat, nor did it grant release. Instead, it drifted closer, wrapping its coils around the fissures. It lowered its massive head until its eyes met his. In their depths, he saw another test waiting, deeper still. This was only the second measure, and the hardest lay ahead. For words could promise, but actions must prove the truth within. The serpent turned, leading him once more toward the trench's descent. Poseidon followed, though the light of his trident now flickered faintly. The abyss grew colder, darker, more silent with every stroke. It felt less like water now, and more like the void of stars. The serpent swam without effort, as though part of the dark itself. Poseidon's body ached, but his will anchored him forward. He whispered into the shadows, steadying his resolve. The sea is endless, and so must be my devotion. The serpent's tail flicked, stirring a current that carried him on. They passed into a cavern vast as mountains, lit by no fire. Only silence reigned here, thick and unbroken, waiting for a sound. Poseidon knew this place held the next trial, silent and immense. The serpent coiled around the cavern walls, vanishing into its shadows. Its eyes glowed faintly, the only stars in the void. Poseidon floated still, the trident dim in his grasp. The silence pressed down, heavy with judgment, yet unspoken. He understood. The next trial would test not his words, but his soul. And in the stillness of the abyss, he braced for what would come. The cavern waited, vast and hollow, as though carved by silence itself. Poseidon floated in stillness, his trident dim as fading starlight. No current moved, no sound stirred, not even his own breath. The serpent's coils stretched through the shadows, unseen yet deeply felt. Its eyes alone glowed faintly, watching without a word or gesture. This was the third measure, the trial of silence and self. Here no voice could reach, no command could shape the sea. Here only truth within would decide the weight of his heart. Poseidon closed his eyes, letting the stillness press against him. The silence was not empty, but full of echoes unspoken. He heard regrets that lingered, mistakes that time had not erased. He heard pride that once blinded him, storms cast without reason. He heard loneliness, the isolation of ruling a boundless realm. The silence forced him inward, deeper than the abyss around him. He did not resist, but let each echo rise and pass. For to deny them would be to deny his own truth. The trident dimmed further, until its glow was but a breath. Poseidon felt doubt claw at him, heavy as crushing tide. The silence asked him who he was when storms were gone. Was he ruler, tyrant, guardian, or only a lonely god? He searched within, not for power, but for purpose untold. I am not storm alone, he thought, steady in the dark. I am tide, I am calm, I am the breath between waves. I am guardian, though I have erred, though I have faltered. I am not perfect, but I am willing to change and serve. The silence shifted then, no longer crushing, but listening. The serpent's eyes flared softly, though its coils did not stir. Poseidon's trident flickered once, as though testing his resolve. He held it steady, not with might, but with quiet truth. The silence pressed again, sharper, testing the cracks in his heart. Visions came, not of past, but of temptation yet to come. He saw the chance to rule with absolute fear and force. He saw mortals bowing, seas trembling at his command alone. He saw gods yielding, Olympus itself bending to his storms. For a moment, pride surged, tempting him with its sweet fire. But he shook his head, letting the image dissolve into the abyss. Dominion without care is hollow, he thought, steady once more. The sea is vast because it holds all, not because it conquers. The silence broke then, a single current stirring at last. It wound around him, cool and gentle, like a hand of trust. The serpent's eyes glowed brighter, their gaze warm, yet unwavering. Poseidon breathed deeply, though no breath was needed in the deep. The trial of silence had shown him his own heart unveiled. It was not perfect, yet it was willing, steady and true. The cavern trembled faintly, as though releasing a burden of ages. The serpent uncoiled slowly, its form stretching like a living horizon. Its gaze lingered on him, heavy with meaning unspoken. The silence receded, replaced by the low hum of the deep. Poseidon lifted his trident, its glow steady once again. It did not blaze with power, but pulsed gently with purpose. The serpent swam closer, bowing its massive head before him. This was not surrender, but acknowledgement of his truth. Yet Poseidon knew the trial was not complete, only transformed. The serpent's eyes flickered once, and a path opened behind. The cavern walls parted, revealing a passage deeper still. Light shimmered faintly there, unlike any glow of sea or earth. It was the final trial, waiting where even silence could not remain. Poseidon turned toward it, his heart steady with newfound clarity. He did not rush, for the abyss had taught him patience. Each stroke forward was a vow, each movement a quiet prayer. The serpent followed, gliding beside him like shadow and guide. Together they swam, leaving behind the cavern of silence. Ahead lay the last trial, the measure that would seal his fate. And Poseidon was ready, not with storm, but with heart unshaken. The passage opened wide, glowing faint as dawn beneath the waves. Poseidon entered slowly, the serpent close, its shadow like a shield. Here the water shimmered, not with darkness, but with quiet light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, soft, yet endlessly strong. The cavern around him was smooth, shaped as though by song. No jagged stone, no shadow deep, only flowing walls of light. The silence had passed, but here came something greater still. This was the trial of memory, a place where truth had roots. Images stirred in the glow, forming shapes of ocean past. He saw mortals casting nets, their faces lit with hope. He saw children laughing, running along the golden shores. He saw sailors lost, praying for mercy beneath raging storms. He saw temples built, voices lifted in hymns of gratitude. Every wave had carried stories, and he felt each one. They clung to him, threads of countless lives, woven in tide. The serpent swam slow, its eyes bright, urging him to see. This was no judgment of silence, but of legacy endured. "What have you left behind?" the light seemed to whisper. "Do the seas sing of mercy, or do they tremble in fear?" Poseidon's chest grew heavy, for memory could not be denied. He saw the storms he cast in anger, fierce and wild. He saw mortals broken, ships torn apart, prayers unanswered. He saw arrogance in his reign, when pride ruled over care. The trident dimmed, its glow dulled by truth unhidden. He lowered his gaze, knowing the weight was his to bear. "I have failed," he thought, the words steady, not despairing. "I have harmed when I should have guarded. I have ignored cries. But I have also cherished, given bounty, protected the weak." The glow around him shifted, holding both grief and grace. The serpent's coils swayed gently, as though measuring his soul. Not all memory was sorrow. Some shone bright as the dawn. He saw storms calmed, lives spared by mercy's hand. He saw rivers guided to fields, bringing food to the hungry. He saw sailors blessed, ships shielded from the wrath of seas. He saw kindness, quiet moments that pride could not erase. Tears welled unbidden, though gods rarely wept in the deep. The memories were many, vast as waves, both dark and bright. They showed him not as tyrant nor saint, but as whole, flawed, striving, failing, yet learning to rise with the tide. The trident glowed again, steadier now, warmed by truth. Poseidon raised it high, not as weapon, but as vow. "I will not deny the past, nor erase what has been done. But I will carry it, learn from it, let it guide my hand." The cavern trembled softly, its light weaving tighter around him. The serpent bowed its head, a gesture solemn, deep with meaning. For memory was not to break him, but to bind him whole. The images faded slowly, dissolving like foam into the sea. Only one light remained, brighter, sharper, calling him forth. It was the heart of the trial, the last gate, yet unpassed. The serpent stirred, rising like a mountain in the glow. Its voice echoed at last, deep and calm like thunder far. "Legacy is truth, Poseidon. Not storm, not silence, but what endures. You have faced yourself in shadow, in silence, and in memory. One trial remains, where all currents meet, where truth is sealed." Poseidon held the serpent's gaze, steady, unflinching, resolute. His heart no longer burned with storm, but pulsed with tide. The path opened again, a river of light cutting through dark. He swam forward, the serpent beside him, vast and sure. The final trial awaited, where no lie could survive the deep. Poseidon pressed on, each stroke a promise to the sea. Ahead lay the heart of judgment, where fate and truth entwined. The river of light stretched forward, endless as a horizon unseen. Poseidon followed, the serpent beside him, its coils vast and still. Here the sea grew strange, neither dark nor bright, but both at once. The waters shimmered, holding fragments of stars, as though sky had drowned. Each spark pulsed gently, whispering truths too old for words. This was the last trial, where all currents met as one. Not silence, not shadow, not memory, but the essence of truth. Poseidon gripped his trident, its glow steady, calm, unafraid. The serpent swam ahead, then turned, blocking his path in full. Its eyes shone like twin moons, grave and unyielding in their light. "Here lies the heart," its voice thundered, low as shifting tides. "You have faced shadow, silence, and memory. Now face your choice." Poseidon did not falter, though his heart stirred with unease. "What choice must I make?" he asked, steady but curious. The serpent's coils circled slowly, a spiral vast as eternity. "To rule or to serve," it said. "To take or to give. The sea is yours, but how it breathes is for you to decide. Will you be storm, demanding fear, or tide, nurturing all?" The words rang heavy, a weight pressing deeper than silence. Poseidon felt currents stir inside, pulling him both ways at once. He saw dominion, power absolute, a reign unbroken by defiance. He saw compassion, endless patience, guiding mortals, creatures, gods alike. Both were within him, storms fierce and calms profound. The trident flickered, its light wavering with his divided heart. He closed his eyes, listening to the ocean that lived within. He heard the cries of sailors, lost in storms they could not fight. He heard the laughter of children, blessed by calm and bounty. He heard the songs of temples, praising both wrath and grace. He heard the serpent's silence, a mirror of the sea itself. To rule alone would be strength, but hollow, brittle, unkind. To serve only would be mercy, but without balance or edge. He opened his eyes, the truth shining steady as dawn. "I am both," he said, his voice firm as tide returning. "I am storm when storm is needed, tide when tide is kind. I will not be only ruler nor only servant, but balance. The sea is all things, and so too must I be." The cavern shook, as though sea itself breathed in answer. The serpent's eyes widened, its coils pausing, then slowly unfurling. Balance had been spoken, the choice made not of pride. Poseidon raised his trident, its glow no longer flickering. It blazed now, not as fire, but as ocean's living light. The sparks around him pulsed, forming currents that swirled and merged. The serpent bowed, lowering its vast head in reverence deep. "You have chosen truth," it said, its voice softer now. "Not storm alone, not calm alone, but the eternal balance. This is the heart of the sea, the law beneath all waves." Poseidon felt the truth settle within, steady as deep tide. His storms were still his calms still his to give. But now they belonged not to pride, but to purpose whole. The cavern dissolved, sparks scattering into the sea eternal. He floated in open water, the serpent vast at his side. No walls, no light, only the living ocean, infinite and free. The trial was done, the measure complete. The heart answered. Yet Poseidon knew this was not an ending, but a beginning. For the sea's law was not a crown, but a calling. The serpent swam upward, its coils rising like mountain peaks. Poseidon followed, his trident glowing steady, his heart calm. The ocean awaited its guardian, renewed in truth and purpose. And he was ready, no longer storm alone, but sea entire. The ocean opened before him, vast and endless, yet strangely calm. Poseidon rose through waters clear as glass, the serpent beside him. No cavern, no trial walls, only the living sea stretched wide. Currents swirled gently, carrying whispers of creatures near and far. The trident in his hand pulsed with steady, radiant light. He was changed, no longer storm alone, but balance true. The serpent swam ahead, its massive form cutting through silence. It spoke once more, its voice rolling like thunder and calm. The sea has measured you, Lord of Waves, Master of Storms. You have chosen balance, and the ocean has accepted your vow. Poseidon bowed his head, not in defeat, but in reverence. The sea is not mine to own, he whispered, voice soft. It is mine to guard, to nurture, to keep whole and free. The serpent's eyes gleamed, shimmering with ancient, wordless approval. Together they moved upward, toward the brighter surface far above. Creatures gathered along the way, drawn by the serpent's call. Schools of fish danced, dolphins leapt, whales hummed deep songs. Even the corals seemed to glow, their colors burning brighter. It was as though the sea itself rejoiced in harmony. Poseidon felt its pulse, not as ruler, but as guardian. He had always wielded power, but now he carried purpose. The serpent slowed, curling its coils in a circle vast. "This is where I leave you," it said, solemn and firm. "My task was to test, not to walk beside forever." Poseidon regarded the serpent, awe filling his timeless eyes. "You have shown me truth, not through words, but through trial." The serpent dipped its head, a bow of respect unbroken. The sea is eternal, and so must its guardian be wise. Remember, Poseidon, storms will rise, but so too must calm. With that, the serpent turned, vanishing into the vast blue. Its shadow faded, leaving only ripples where it once swam. Poseidon stood alone, though not lonely, for the sea surrounded him. The weight of silence, memory, and choice lingered, but not heavy. They were reminders, lessons carved into the current of his being. He lifted his trident, and it glowed brighter than before. No longer a symbol of might alone, but of balance, eternal. He rose higher, breaking into the world above the waves. The sky stretched wide, painted in gold by the setting sun. Winds brushed his face, carrying scents of earth and salt. He saw mortals upon their shores, small yet full of life. He felt their prayers rise like whispers, carried by the breeze. Once he might have answered with storms, proud and unyielding. Now he breathed calm into the tide, a gift of peace. The waves touched the shores gently, a lullaby of the deep. Sailors far at sea felt the currents shift to safety. Children on beaches laughed as waters kissed their feet kindly. Temples on cliffs shone in the fading glow of twilight. The sea was not conquered, nor ever would it be. But it was held in care, in guardianship, in balance. Poseidon knew his trial had ended, but his duty began anew. He would be storm when needed, tide when kindness called. He would not rule for fear, but guide for harmony's sake. The horizon stretched endless, a canvas for both storm and calm. And Poseidon, god of the sea, swore to honor both. The ocean sang softly, a hymn to its chosen guardian. And in its song, the serpent's voice lingered like distant thunder. "Balance," it whispered, again and again, as waves kissed the shore. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in strokes of fire and gold. Poseidon stood on the cliffs above the sea, his trident resting firm. The trial had ended, but its echoes would never truly fade away. The serpent's voice lingered in his mind, soft as tide and firm. "Balance," it had said, and balance was now his guiding compass. He watched the waves roll steady, neither storming nor falling asleep. They carried their own rhythm, like breath, like the heart of the sea. For the first time, Poseidon felt the ocean not as power. He felt it as presence, a companion, vast, eternal, and alive. The gods often claimed dominion, yet here he claimed guardianship instead. A role heavier than conquest, but brighter than any crown of pride. As the tide whispered, he thought of mortals sailing far from shore, He thought of fishermen casting nets, their lives tied to the sea. Thought of children building castles in sand, unaware of tides. And he thought of sailors who prayed under stars to find their way. The sea touched them all, in joy, in fear, in reverence, in need. And he was its steward, the bridge between God and mortal hearts. The serpent had left him, but its lesson remained alive and sharp. Storms would still come, for storms were truth as much as calm. But storms could yield, and peace could rise without either being lost. He turned, gazing inland, where green fields met with mountain heights. The land and the sea, two halves of the world, different yet whole. He had once thought the sea stood apart, untamed, his alone to wield. But he saw now it was thread in the tapestry, woven with all. Every river that flowed, every rain that fell, all found the ocean. Every life, no matter how distant, touched the tide in time. He lifted his trident high, and the sky answered with twilight glow. Not storm, not lightning, but a glow that softened as stars emerged. The constellations reflected on the waves, turning sea to endless mirror. And Poseidon, god of tides, stood between them, keeper of the bridge. He thought of his brothers, Zeus in the sky, Hades in the earth, each guardian of a realm, each tested in their own way. Yet none bore the weight of change so constant as the sea. He accepted this truth, for in change lay both challenge and gift. And the ocean had chosen him, not as master, but as guardian true. He stepped down from the cliffs, the tide rising to greet his feet. The water wrapped around him gently, pulling him back into embrace. Voices of whales echoed, dolphins leapt, fish swirled in silver rivers. Even the corals sang in hues brighter than moonlight below. The sea was alive, endless, and yet welcoming, never only his. And in that welcome, Poseidon found the deepest strength he had sought. The trial of the serpent had ended, but the vow was eternal. Balance, whispered the sea. Balance between power and peace. Balance between storm and tide, between the god and the mortal. Poseidon smiled, a rare softness breaking the edges of his pride. He no longer sought to rule, but to guide, to guard, to give. And so the waves rolled, steady, eternal, carrying whispers of his vow. The horizon stretched wide, endless, a canvas for storm and calm alike, and Poseidon walked with the sea not above it, but beside forever.